Hello, listeners. Jordan here. I just want to let you know that you can listen to Nighttime early and ad-free on Amazon Music. Include it with Prime.
You are listening to the Nighttime Podcast.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to another installment of Nighttime's listener-contributed Encounters with Creep series. If you're new here, I'm Jordan, and a few years back I asked you, the listeners of Nighttime, to share with me your personal experiences with unsettling, eerie, and downright creepy people. And well, you guys had a ton. And I've been doing my best to bring the stories back to you, and that's what I'm going to be doing again now. Tonight, we'll collectively cringe at the 26th volume of your real-life stories that give a reason to carry pepper spray. Joining me, as usual, is Madelayne Klein, and together we'll unpack stories about creeps with basement apartments, creeps with unlaminated notes, a dog who may be able to sense creeps, and a creep who needs a witness to testify on his behalf in a domestic abuse case. So with that said, settle in and welcome to Volume 26 of your Encounters with Creeps. Ms. Madelayne Klein, Easter happened. It didn't put a stop to us. We're back in a post-Easter world. How are you doing over there?
I cannot wait for this damn election to be over. Like, it's stressing me out. I thought I was having a heart attack the other night. It turned out to be heartburn. But the point is...
About the election?
Well, just about, stress in general. Stress kills, man.
Oh, I believe it 100%, and I feel it because I'm at my worst when I'm stressed out, and I think most people are, and at my worst, like mentally and physically. But I think right now there's just so much going on in the world, so much to be stressed out, and even whether it's stressed out or even just like concerned by, there's just so much of it. And yeah, I'm kind of excited for the election to happen and just, maybe things kind of even out and get normal a little bit, or at least stable after that, hopefully.
I hope so.
We're not here to talk politics, to talk elections. We're here to unpack listener-contributed stories surrounding creep encounters, our 26th volume of this stuff. Whoever would have imagined a day when we're almost 26 hours into this? Isn't it wild?
It is. Like, at first, I would have never believed you if you told me we would be on episode 26. But if you think about it, creeps are the gift that keep on giving.
That's true. And it's kind of like every time we create an episode of Creep Encounters and put it out into the world, people listen and get inspired or feel compelled to share their story or to react to other stories. So it's this kind of perpetual thing that's happening. But all that said, let's start with a piece of listener mail that I got. On volume 25, the last episode in this series, one of the more memorable stories we heard was from Pauline. She was the senior who shared a childhood creep encounter that occurred in a library. I'm sure you remember, Pauline.
I do.
I have never told this story to anybody. So tonight I'm getting up the nerve to write to you and tell you that even at Christmas, there are creeps around. I'm 69 now, and I still think of poor children going to the library.
A listener named Jess, after hearing Pauline share her story so thoughtfully, Jess felt compelled to write in and give some comments to Pauline. So I'm just gonna do it right here through the show. Here's what Jess had to say about Pauline's call.
Hi, this message is actually for Pauline. My name is Jessie, and I am a trauma therapist and childhood sexual assault survivor, and I just want to tell you that you are not alone, and I'm so proud of you for telling your story. I'm just really inspired. Thank you so much.
Isn't that nice?
That's so nice. How refreshing, to get a message like that.
Yeah, and we have another, because Jess, she has a background in this work, as she said. So when I first heard that message she sent for Pauline, I thought, oh, wow, this is a professional in this field is at least appreciative enough of our work to listen. But she actually sent a separate voicemail to us that I'll air at the end of the show, where she talked about what we're doing and how she sees it from her point of view as someone with training and experience. So that'll be interesting. That'll be our palate cleanser at the very end of the episode. Instead of a palate cleanser, let's do whatever the opposite is. We always start our Encounters with Creep episodes by hearing about a creep that's in the news. And here in Nova Scotia, oh man, we had quite a creep in the news just last week. This involves a Nova Scotia landlord who turned out to be a massive creep. This is a nasty one. It was in the news. I'm going to play you a CBC clip in which this mother, whose name is protected by a publication ban, shares the story.
The nightmare started in the bath. A young single mother's privacy evaporating when she looked up, spotting a tiny camera in the ceiling of her bathroom.
It looked like a screw, but I had a feeling that it was not a screw. I was shaking. I was in sheer, utter panic.
This is the camera she found, smaller than a pinky nail. The woman, whose identity is protected by a court-ordered publication ban, called police immediately. She says RCMP traced the camera to her landlord's home upstairs, the receiver hidden in a floor vent in his bathroom.
It was the sickest feeling of my life. I don't even know a word to describe how low and violated I felt at that time.
RCMP say they executed a search warrant and seized items from the landlord's home, which led to a charge of voyeurism, a sex crime.
It's an incredibly serious offense.
This privacy lawyer says that charge could lead to others, depending who was caught on camera.
So somebody who observes a young person in this particular state voyeuristically is also creating child pornography.
The young woman is waiting to find out more about what was recorded, saying she and her young son never felt safe around their landlord.
I did not have anywhere else to go. There's a super bad rental crisis, as everyone knows.
Housing advocates say this is a chronic problem across the country.
We're going to continue to see these unfortunate stories with tenants trapped essentially in their current housing, because they don't want to risk the only housing they can find, the only housing they can afford.
The woman and her son are now staying with family and couch surfing as she searches for a new home where she isn't being watched.
Oh, that is like worst case scenario. To have a kid in there as well, and also like to not know at this point. It seems like she knows there was a camera and knows that it was recording, but it seems like the police haven't yet told her like the extent of this.
Well, right. If it's recording like 24 hours or has like a motion sensor.
Yeah. And what is he doing with the recordings?
Exactly.
Because that'd be another thing. I'd be like, is he just like this pervert up there who's looking at them? Is he streaming it online and selling them to people? Because for people, a lot of people are going to be listening and not see the video of that. But the way it looks is like in where the wall meets the ceiling, there's kind of like this like trim around it. It looks like he drilled a hole through it and stuck just this little camera that's about the size of, in the news clip, they call it a pinky nail, like on your finger, your pinky. So it just looks like a regular screw. There was other stuff going on with this landlord, but she was concerned enough that she got up and grabbed it. And imagine the feeling when you grab it, like that's a screw, right? You grab it and then you pull it down and there's a big cord coming from it, pointing at your bathtub that you're in naked.
That's like out of a horror movie.
According to the mother who was filmed, and I'm going to take her word for all of this, is this landlord, long before this whole situation with the camera, it had been raising red flags. She only moved in there just this past November. She hasn't even been there a year yet. But he apparently was texting her and calling her all hours of the night, multiple times entering her place without permission, which a landlord can't do. And she wanted to leave even before this, but due to her income, being a single mother of a toddler, and the housing crisis and rental crisis being what it was, she was stuck there dealing with this guy. And it took it getting to this level and him being arrested, for her to finally get out of that. Now she's, I believe, just like living with family, like couch surfing until she can find another place.
I wish an appropriate, and I don't think a judge could ever do this, but I wish the judge could order the landlord to like sign the house over to her free of charge.
Yeah.
And that's that. You get to keep the mortgage.
Yeah, and you can't see what goes on in that bathroom. That's
right.
Awful. It's what a horror story. And the way I came across the story, like it's been in the news, but before it was in the news, the mom actually wrote a post on Facebook where she went into detail about what's happened, and she showed photos of the camera, But I think all of that's been deleted because now there's like a publication ban banning
Oh yeah.
her identity or the landlord's identity because of the child that's involved. And likely more charges will come out of this because if he even once filmed that kid,
Oh,
then there's going to be a
that
whole different
opens up
thing
a
going
whole
down.
different can of worms. And let's hope he doesn't have any other
Yeah.
properties. Like, how many properties is he doing this to?
Yeah, I think there's a lot more to this story that's going to come out, and it's probably going to get worse. Ugh. But that is the creep that was in the news around Nova Scotia or around Canada. But we got a lot of creeps that weren't in the news, but were creeping out listeners of the Nighttime podcast and the Encounters with Creeps series. So that's what we're going to get to. We have a wild collection tonight. Usually I come up with themes and then we separate them a little bit. That's not happening tonight. What we're going to do is take our first break, and when we come back, it's just going to be rapid fire creep encounters. And after our second break, we're going to have another one of those creep encounters that open up this huge Pandora's box rabbit hole kind of thing. That's what we'll end the show with. But let's get started. We'll take our first break, and then we'll pass the mic to listeners of the show to share their creep encounters. All right, Madelayne, we're back. Let's just jump right into the deep end of creep encounters. We have a creep encounter coming up from a listener named Jill in New Jersey that is unlike any creep encounter I've heard before. The way this one plays out is quite wild. Her creep encounter starts with her testifying on behalf of the creep.
Oh, episode 26, and we're getting a new genre of creep.
Yeah,
this is amazing.
This is like the Law and Order creep encounter thing. Watch how this all unfolds. Here's Jill.
Hey Jordan, hey Madelayne. My name is Jill from New Jersey. I came here from Morbid and I love the Creepy Encounters series. I, being a female, have many creepy stories, but I think you guys will be interested about this specific one. So about 8 years ago, when I was around 25, I was serving at this restaurant. And I've worked there for a few years, so I knew all the regulars, and there was this specific married couple in their mid to late 40s at the time, and they were super nice every time I waited on them. Well, one morning I get into work, and my manager says we received a letter from a lawyer asking if anybody who worked this specific night who remembers seeing that couple would be willing to be a witness in court. So me being younger and thinking, oh, this is fun, and anything to get out of work, I volunteered. So I would be a witness on the husband's side who says neither of them were angry or aggressive because the wife claimed that he was threatening her during their dinner. So I went into court and just explained what I saw that night, that they were not aggressive or angry in my opinion. And that was that. So a couple of weeks go by and the husband starts coming into the restaurant alone and sitting at the bar requesting me to wait on him. And at first he was just being super grateful that I went to court for him and leaving good tips. So I was like, all right, whatever. This is awesome. I get good tips. Then slowly he started being creepy and asking for hugs in front of all my coworkers. And I felt super uncomfortable and awkward, but I didn't want to be mean. So yeah, I would just do it. And he started leaving me personal tips and told me to keep it for myself because we would pool tips there, and he knew that. Eventually, everything started slowing down because he comes in once again and asks me for a hug, asked me out on a date with him. I did not have a boyfriend at the time, but I lied and said I did and declined. But after that, he kind of backed off, thank God. But yeah, I was super uncomfortable during that period of time, and it makes me cringe when I think about it. And yeah.
I know what she means by like it makes me cringe when I think about it. It's not that she did anything wrong, just that whole thing is so awkward and weird. And I understand her willingness to be like, yeah, like I'll go in and testify. Like I didn't see anything going on. It's like I'll say that. And
it's the right thing to do, right?
And it seems like she's sincere, like she waited on them and didn't see anything. So it's it's worthwhile to have that shared in court. But I guess what ended up happening probably is he probably saw her as the savior that's on his side. He's recently divorced, obviously.
Well, the wife just hates her now.
Oh, yeah. But it's not Jill's fault. She was just trying to get out of work.
Right? You gotta cut her some slack.
Yeah, but anyway, in the end, like
Oh.
to ask out to ask on a date the waitress who testified on your behalf in a domestic violence case is I'd say that's creepy.
Like, did you think she was flirting with you?
By testifying
I
on your
don't
behalf.
understand.
Could you imagine, like, how did you two meet? It's a really long story.
Oh my God. But you know what? It wouldn't be a bad story. It'd be kind of funny, I guess. Maybe years
Uh,
later.
no, I don't think I don't think there's a time or a world where we met when I testified on his behalf because his ex accused him of this, this stuff. And yeah,
Oh, drama.
let's move on to the next one. We got a lot to get into, so we're going to plow through these. This next one, much like we opened the show with a listener named Jess complimenting or sending a message to Pauline, who shared her story last week, we have a listener named Ted who was inspired to share his story after hearing a story that we aired in volume 25. Do you remember the laminated note?
Yes, of course. How could I forget?
Ted, a listener named Ted had a similar story. The big difference, though, his wasn't laminated, but listen to this.
Hello, Jordan and Madeline. This is Ted calling. I was inspired from the story told on episode 25, where the woman from BC had a note left for her on a bus stop, and it reminded me of a situation. This was going back to the mid 90s, and I was a trainer and a fitness instructor at a gym in Cambridge, Ontario. And one day I came out after my shift and there was a note on my car. And it was not laminated like in the previous story, and it did rain that day, so the note was a little bit saturated, but essentially it was a full-page note under the windshield of my car that basically said that I look at you and watch you every day, and I just dream that a girl like me could be with a guy like you someday. And don't remember exactly what it said. It was 30 years ago, but it rambled on for a full page about how she watches me all the time. I did actually keep the note for quite a long time, and it was thrown away in one of my moves several years ago. So I don't actually have the note, but it did. I did pass it around to all my friends that worked at the gym with me, and we for months and months and months tried to figure out who it was with no success. So for probably another 4 or 5 years while I worked at that facility, had to go into that gym and teach classes and train clients, and did not know who had left me that note. Anyway, love Creep Encounters, and keep the show going. Thanks. Bye.
Oh, so I don't know if it's that creepy. She expressed her interest in him. I think the worst part, though, is not her not revealing who she was, and for him to basically be haunted by this missed connection every time he went into work.
Right. And he was just like every class he taught, he was like scanning the room. It was like, which one
Yeah,
of you?
super paranoid. Every question, like someone ask him, why are you asking that? Let me see your handwriting.
And I mean, it's not right. Can you like sign this? It's not the fact that she left a note. It's the length
Yeah,
of
full
the
page
note.
is a lot. You should be able to get your point across quicker. I'm in your 6 o'clock class. We've talked a few
Right.
times, and I don't want to interfere on your work. So if you're interested in getting to know me outside of the work, text me or email me here. End of note.
Right. But yeah, no communication option, and then like a long rambling note about something about being with a girl like her. Yeah, very odd. Just an odd approach.
I think he
But
dodged a bullet, but what's weird is that the bullet probably spun around him for years after that without him knowing.
hung around.
I think that's cruel. That would drive me nuts. I'd have to leave my job. I don't think I could continue to go there.
You'd have to
I'm
quit.
sorry, boss, but I got this note.
Reason for resignation. Secret admirer.
Well, if you really want to torture someone, just leave a note like that outside, like on their car outside of their work, and don't say who it's from. Like you could drive someone crazy.
Yeah, that's true. Or catch a
Yeah, that's
charge,
true.
whichever.
I have another. We have a lot of offbeat creep stories tonight. This next one, I don't know if this is a creep story or a creep encounter, but I think it's definitely going to get some people talking, especially dog lovers. We've covered stories involving dogs in the past. We had the guy who had all like the portraits of dogs all over his walls.
I was just thinking about that one not long ago.
Well, here's a different creep encounter involving a dog. Barb's story ultimately asks the question, can dogs sense creeps? Here it comes.
The answer is yes.
Hey, Jordan and Madeline. I have a story for your creep encounters. Not sure if this is a creep encounter or not. I'll leave it up to you to decide. I kind of have my decision made, but this happened a few years ago, and I used to have a very large dog. She was about 130 pounds. She was a complete marshmallow, loved everybody, loved other animals, loved kittens. She was just, like I said, a marshmallow. And there was this guy that I knew. I didn't really know him really well. Our families were from the same town. And at one time, he had been dating my best friend's sister, so kind of knew a bit of him from that way. He was a little bit older than me, just a year or two older than me. Anyways, I was out with my dog on a leash. We were walking, and she was always very excited to see people. So I happened to meet up with him. It was near a gas station, so we stopped and we chatted for a minute. And he reached out to pet my dog, which she would normally love, attention from somebody. She gave him this deep, way down in the chest growl. Her hair stood up on the back of her neck, and she backed up. And there was no way that she would let him touch her. And I kind of always wondered, what was she sensing, or what was she picking up from him that I had never noticed, or I hadn't had radar to. But anyways, ever since then, every time I see him, I always remember that. Thanks. Enjoy the show.
You got to trust your dog, man.
Especially if it's a out of the ordinary kind of reaction. But you do hear a lot about dogs that are afraid of men or like aggressive towards men. It's weird that happens, but I guess it's different to be aggressive towards men than it is to be aggressive towards this man.
Specifically.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
to never have seen that reaction before, I trust the dog too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'd want nothing to do with that person. There's enough humans on the planet that my dog isn't offended by. So, sir, you have to live separate from me.
Dogs and kids, they know. So, like, if your dog or your kid doesn't like someone, it's for good reason.
Yeah.
They can sense things.
Mm-hmm. I bet you there's other listeners out there with dogs because people really know dogs. If you're a dog owner who has an opinion on can a dog sense a creep, I'd like to hear it. And certainly if you have any creep encounters involving dogs, we want them as well. But another kind of reoccurring thread we have on occasion, we're going to get into the next story in our Is It a Creep or Is It a Ghost subplot.
Ooh.
These are fun ones, right?
These are creepy
Now,
in a different way.
We've been through a few stories where it sounds like a creep, but it also sounds a bit like a ghost. A listener named Kayleen in Ottawa had a weird encounter at a gas station that to me, I don't know, I think she saw a ghost. Here it comes.
Hey, Jordan and Madelayne. This is Kayleen calling from Ottawa. A long-time listener, first-time caller. A couple years ago, I was getting gas at a gas station, and this guy randomly I'm pulling up to the pump, and this guy randomly just like walks in front of the pump as I'm pulling in. So he walks through it and above, so I have to stop to not hit him. And I was like, okay, this is great. So I stop, pull up, start getting gas, but this guy is walking very slowly, and he's looking back at me and grinning with this creepy Art the Clown Terrifier grin, and he's just walking and grinning, and he doesn't stop. And I was just like, what the hell is going on? So he disappeared, but it was just insane that he was just walking away, but he had his head turned, that he was smiling the whole time.
Ew.
I know. Is it a creep? Yes. Is it a ghost? Here's why I think it could be like some kind of weird supernatural thing. Is if you were like, getting gas and for some reason you encountered like, I don't know, like a creepy clown sort of thing, and you were trying to tell that story to someone. That's how it would come across. Like, what did he do?
Yes.
He was just out of place
He
with
was
his
just
bizarre
there.
smirk. I think she encountered like a demon or something, or a ghost, a demon, or some kind of like, I don't know, like failed 1980s horror killer idea.
Well, I hope it was a ghost, not a
Yeah.
1980s killer clown.
Yeah, the only thing that was missing was his clown suit. But I don't know, when I hear her tell that story, I can picture this like mile long smirk in him just staring with his beady eyes, and time slowing right down, and her just like
Ugh.
frozen in fear. I can almost imagine her pumping the gas, and as the little dial spinning with the gas, it eventually her engine or her gas tank fills, and it's like click, but she's still like kind of locked in that moment with slow motion and him just staring.
I would, in that situation, I would think like, do I have like a lighter or matches on myself? And then if I need to, I could like set him on fire.
You'd burn this man alive.
Well, if he approached, not even just approached me, if I needed to. You always got to be prepared.
Yeah, wow, I wouldn't have went there. If he comes in like spraying gas distance to you.
Yes, exactly.
Don't smile at Madelayne when she's pumping gas. Good
Well,
Lord.
haven't you ever like back in your party days gone to a really sketchy house party, and you go in and you like immediately you keep your shoes on and you immediately map your escape?
Oh yeah. Like I keep my phone in my pocket, I'm keeping my shoes on and my jacket on.
You're like, that window opens and there's the back door.
Yeah. Well, but in this case though, she's at a gas station in the middle of the day. She had a million directions she could run, but I guess, is it a creep encounter? Does it fit the scope of our show?
Oh, well, the scope is very large, so yes.
Okay. Yeah.
The spectrum is broad.
Yeah, it is somewhere on the spectrum. I guess if we can.
He was scared, it was creepy.
He had a crazy smile. That's creepy.
Slightly off topic, but not really. Are you scared of clowns?
Yeah, and I'm scared of people who just like smile awkwardly. I'm not scared of clowns. I'm just like disturbed by them. It seems such a
Really?
It's so weird. Like, well, where I'm from in Cape Breton, we had like the most stereotypical like child abusing clown. He was a children's entertainer named Klutzy the Clown. I did a 3-part series about him on Nighttime, and he was at like every low budget birthday party or public event, and I always thought he was weird. And then all of a sudden he got arrested for doing horrible things to a minor. And
my God.
I did a 3-part series on him. In the first part, we tell the story about him and everything. The second part, I interviewed 2 filmmakers who made a documentary about him before the crime. So the documentary was about this man who's passionate about being a clown and entertaining kids. But they came on the show being like, yeah, we don't promote that documentary at all anymore because of what happened. And then I randomly got a voicemail on my website from someone being like, I heard your Klutzy episode, and the victim is me, and I'll tell you the story. So our third episode is the victim. She was a child when it happened, but she's above age now, but there's still a publication ban, I think. So I believe we disguised her voice. But anyway, long story short, I find clowns creepy. I grew up reading Stephen King, so of course it freaked me out. I had Klutzy at home. I don't like it.
I think that's like, what a horrible person, but a great clown name.
Is Klutzy?
That's a hilarious clown name.
Oh, there's probably a million of them.
So much better than like Bozo.
Yeah.
But I've never gotten the fear of clowns thing. It's just a guy in makeup.
Why though?
That's just me.
I just find it depressing, and just I don't like clowns at all.
Right. But I'd never be like, oh, a clown.
Let's put clowns on the back burner here. We're going to take our final ad break. We're doing it a little early because what's about to come just around the corner is one of the wilder stories that we will have shared. And I'm saying that on volume 26. So buckle up for this one.
Ooh.
We got a wild one here, Madelayne. This is the story a listener shares of a creep she met at a playground in Halifax. She gives the creep's name. I ended up Googling it, and oh man, there's way more to the story than I think she even knows. So let's listen in.
Hi, Madeline and Jordan. So my encounters with creeps story that I have for you takes place in Halifax, Nova Scotia, specifically the Fairview area. And this would have happened back in 2001, 2002. So my family lived in this area at the time. And back when I was about 9 or 10, a group of myself and the neighborhood kids would all walk to elementary school together. And sometimes the parents would accompany, sometimes they wouldn't. But there would always be this one man in his 40s, I would say, who wasn't related to any of the children, but he would always be walking along with the group. And I remember even sometimes he would take us to the local Needs convenience store to buy us candy. And he always just kind of seemed like the cool guy, the cool adult guy who was just sort of like, I don't know, watching over us, I guess, as like a young child. But I do remember my mom mentioning him to one of the other moms in the group and saying, you know, like, don't you think he's a little weird? Why is he walking with our kids? There's something about him that I don't like. And I guess this other mom was just sort of like, oh no, he's harmless, and just, you know, brushed him off. But he always rubbed my mom the wrong way, and my mom did not want us around him. So at the time, my brother was about 7 years old, and we were playing at the local playground. And this man ends up showing up at the playground. There were no other kids, no other adults. It was just my brother and I, midday, and he shows up. And I believe my brother and I were playing some sort of playground game like Rounders or something. So this man comes up, and he starts trying to inject himself into the game and started to chase us around on the playground. And I just got this overwhelming feeling of danger. Like I needed to get away from him. He was making me feel very uncomfortable. And he ended up kind of chasing me and catching me. And then he put his hand on the back of my neck and he squeezed it. And I remember him squeezing quite hard. And I remember him asking me if it hurt, and then him asking me if I thought that felt good. And then all of a sudden, my brother, who, like I said, was about 7, he knew that something was wrong, and he screamed at this man to get away from me, get off my sister, and then the two of us just ran home. So the moment I got home, I told my mom right away, you know, like, oh, that weird guy, he was at the playground, he was chasing us around, and he squeezed my neck and said this, and she immediately freaked out. She immediately called the police. I remember the police coming to our house and taking a statement from me. And as soon as we described the man, they knew exactly who we were talking about. They said that they had encounters with him before. I remember them calling their file the playground predator or something like that about him. And so anyways, lo and behold, that ended up with them investigating him. During all of this, I remember seeing him walking to school with a little girl who clearly had no relation to him. She was not the same race as him. I don't believe she spoke English. And even at that young age of 10 years old, I knew that something was off. So anyways, they investigated him. He was a child predator. They ended up sending him to jail. He has a bunch of charges against him. You can actually Google his name. I'm not sure if you're allowed to say names of predators here on your podcast, but his name is Miles Payne. And he had multiple victims. When I've told my friends from that area stories about him, some of them have had weird encounters with him as well. Anyways, I'm sure that he's back out on the streets now due to our lovely Canadian justice system. I haven't really come across any news about him in the recent years.
She's going to hear some news about him in a few minutes, but first let's talk about this story. Like, oh my God, it's like textbook, scary, local pedophile creep.
Yeah, they exist. They walk among us.
Yeah, it's wild to hear like that story because it's so textbook that it's almost like, how could he get away with that? When you hear that story, it seems like it should be set in like the 50s or 60s, I think, when people could be a little weirder.
Right.
But even 2001, 2002, when this took place, I'm surprised he was even able to get away with it for as long as he did. But I guess the parents were onto him. Like you hear her describe, her mom was bringing it up with some of the other kids' parents and stuff. So they were watching him, and it just took him doing something, which was grabbing her by the neck. Luckily, her brother was there, and they got out of it with nothing worse having happened. But it seems like
fairly unscathed.
Yeah, but it seems like a lot of other people weren't as lucky because this guy ended up getting a ton of charges, going to prison for a considerable amount of time, and it even receiving the designation of what's called like a long-term offender, which is similar to a dangerous offender. It makes it so that when he gets out, there's a lot more requirements to follow certain rules and abide by certain conditions, which is something they would only do for someone who cannot control themselves and is, at a risk to the public.
Yeah, let's release someone who's gonna reoffend.
Yeah, it's an awful story. But anyway, here's where the crazy part, well, one of the many crazy parts come up. So she ended her voicemail by saying, I haven't heard about him for years. As far as I know, he's out on the streets again. Right?
Right.
What's the date today that we're recording this?
It is April 25th?
Yes, it is April 25th. I Googled his name. The first thing that popped up is a news article from April 19th, 6 days ago.
This year?
Yes.
Oh my God.
It's a 6-day-old article with the headline, Halifax man has been handed a 5-year prison sentence for breaching court conditions. So.
Oh my God.
It's a long article because he's done a whole lot of nasty stuff. But like she said, he was released. He was living in Halifax, but not anymore. Not even a week ago, he was sent to jail for 5 years. Here's some of the article. I'll read it to you. 62-year-old Miles Payne pled guilty last year in Halifax Provincial Court for failing to comply with a long-term supervision order to not be around a child without being accompanied by a responsible adult who knew his criminal history and had been approved by his parole supervisor, and an order barring him from attending places where children are likely to congregate, such as a playground. So I just want to stop for a second, just say that's his condition is to not be around a child without a responsible adult who knew his criminal history being there and his parole supervisor being informed of it. So like if you are that dangerous around kids that it's basically an application process, that speaks to how nuts this guy is. On top of that, he also isn't allowed around playgrounds or places where kids would congregate. I'm going to get back into what he did and what led to these breaches. On August 23rd of 2023, a woman approached a Halifax regional police officer asking whether a man named Miles Clark was on the sex offender registry. She said the man had been far too friendly with her daughter at a local park. The officer went to the man's address, spoke to the building superintendent, and learned that the man's real name was Miles Payne. The woman told police she had been on a Halifax transit bus with her 3 children about a year earlier when they engaged in small talk with the man. During the conversation, it was revealed that he knew her daughter was 11 years old and was on the autism spectrum. When the woman got home, she asked her daughter how the man knew her, and the daughter told her that they had said hi to each other several times on a playground. In September or October of 2022, the woman was at the playground with her kids when Payne came up to her and said her daughter had told him she could not read. He said his wife was a teacher and she could help the girl learn to read. The woman declined the offer because she didn't feel comfortable. Later that fall, Payne and his wife took the woman's family to a restaurant. The mother said Payne seemed nice and told them he and his wife could never have kids, but were well off and enjoyed giving to children. She said Payne was always giving money to her daughter and candy to other children. The woman noticed that whenever her daughter was at the playground, Payne would show up. She said she and Payne exchanged cell phone numbers for tutoring purposes. He asked if he could take her daughter out to eat or to the mall, and she said no. Just before Christmas, Payne offered to take her children to the mall to buy them gifts. The mother agreed to that, but she went along. Payne's texts to the woman became aggressive if she didn't reply quickly, such as when he asked when her daughter would be at the playground next. She advised police she deleted Payne from her phone number because she felt like she was being harassed. The next time the woman saw Payne's wife on the bus, she asked her if he was on the sex offender registry. She said that he wasn't and that his name was Miles Clark and invited her to look him up. Payne later confronted the woman and was upset that she had talked to his wife. As Payne walked away, he said, "Take better care of your daughter." The mother responded by calling him a sicko. In March of 2023, Payne followed the woman and her children to downtown Halifax. She saw him several places around the ferry terminal, and he ducked when she pointed at him. That April, Payne spoke to the girl in a hallway of their apartment building. The girl said he asked her, "Do you still like me?" It was around that point that the mother went to the police.
I can't believe the wife is real.
Yeah.
When you first mentioned that he mentioned a wife, I was like, there's no wife.
Yeah.
But then the woman met with him and the wife.
And was giving a fake name for him. As you follow the timeline, he had already been familiar with this kid from talking to her at a playground, knew a little bit about her. And then he ends up on the bus with this kid and the mom and strikes up a conversation. I wonder if he was like following them from the beginning.
Probably.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so odd.
But long story short, this listener had this same kind of thing happen in the same city. Here he is 20-something years later using a fake name, doing the same thing, and is back to prison for 5 years.
Ugh, to like befriend her mother and try and... Ugh.
It's hard to get a sense of the relationship because it's like at some points in that timeline, the mother's like, no, like this is weird. But then it's also they do end up forming some kind of friendship because they're going out to eat and stuff and
right,
going to the mall together. But they need to lock him up and just throw away the key at this point.
Cases like this that really make me ask myself why I reproduced.
It's a dark world.
When I got pregnant, my brother was like, "Why are you having a child? Like, he gestured broadly, was like, have you looked around?" I was like, I know. I don't know what I'm doing.
I haven't read the news in a while. Why? Is something happening?
Just bury my head in the sand.
I have one other story. It's a story that we discussed on the most recent episode of Keep Canada Weird, but I think just given the nature of the whole thing, I just want to share this with you in the context of Encounters with Creeps. Have you heard about the controversial new ad campaign by the TTC, which is the Toronto Transit Commission, like the group that manages the buses and subways in Toronto?
No,
Okay.
but I'm intrigued now.
It's an ad campaign that got a whole lot of criticism. It's called Between Stops, and it's an ad campaign that seems to encourage people riding the subway and buses to form either platonic or romantic relationships with other people on the bus.
What an awful idea.
If they're trying to get this series to go from volume 26 to volume 200, yeah, sure, encourage people to chat with each other on the subways in Toronto.
We could have Encounters with Creeps TTC edition.
Yeah, this episode of Encounters with Creeps is sponsored by the Toronto Transit Commission.
You know what?
Coming up next is just, one person after another talking about someone trying to talk to them on the bus while they had their headphones in.
Yeah, or like smelling them, or following them, or touching them, or sucking on their hair. Remember that one?
Yeah, I know. Like, how many stories did we have with buses and subways and stuff? Come on. I don't know what they were thinking. Yeah, in a perfect world, like in this blissful utopia nirvana, maybe that world you can be like, everyone's like happy and pleasant and no one's bad. So let's all talk to each other. Like, yeah, but that's certainly not the world we live in.
I'm trying to picture how that board meeting went and how the I don't know if it's the social media manager or the
It'd be just to be like a marketing team,
Thank you.
because
That's the word
it
I'm
was a
looking
big
for.
campaign. They even had like short videos and stuff online where they were interviewing like kind of people who met their girlfriends and stuff on the subway. It's
And you just know some like intern came in one day after he saw just like the hottest girl on the subway on the way to work. He was like, I have the best idea, you guys.
oh, it's
Oh,
utter nonsense. But I just wanted to share it here. It just felt appropriate given how
oh.
many creep encounters we shared that involved buses. But I told you we were going to go out with a palate cleanser. And this is an interesting one. We heard from Jess at the beginning, who was responding to Pauline's voicemail. Jess also sent a separate message to you and I that gave her opinion on this series from the point of view of someone who works specifically with um, childhood trauma. I think it was appropriate to share it.
My name's Jessie. I've left you messages before. This is just for you too. I just want you to know that I think that what you're doing is very socially important and kind of revolutionary. I'm a trauma therapist. I'm sure I've said that before. I work with a lot of people who have been sexually abused. I'm a sex trafficking survivor, and you giving a platform for people to talk about their sort of ambiguously scary experiences is very therapeutic. And I'm just really excited and grateful.
Isn't that nice?
That's so lovely. Like these
Mhm.
episodes are, like fun and they can be lighthearted and funny, but it's so nice to hear that.
Yeah, it is. And from somebody who has that background,
Right.
because we don't kind of the way we've always thought about it, we say like trauma with a lowercase t. So I think maybe if anything, what's happening is it's kind of normalizing that this is happening to everybody, and not so much like signs to look for, but I think if you listen to a lot of this, you're probably more likely to tell someone to F off if they approach you on the bus.
Absolutely. Sharing your story holds space for others to share their own.
Yeah,
So,
it
yeah.
seems like it. And in so many of the stories, they kind of have the same, some of the same elements. Like, I was at work and, you have to be nice, and the buddy takes advantage of that. But I think just by like having that out there and having that talked about, maybe it's good for people. If anything, if nothing else, these stories can be entertaining to listen to, but if good comes out of it, yeah, that's great. I don't know
Absolutely.
about I don't know about revolutionary. I won't go there, but I was happy. I'm happy that someone with that background appreciates it.
Me too. Yeah. And like so many of our callers, if you will, their story is kind of piggybacking off of another one. They're like, oh, like I
Yeah,
heard this story and it reminded me of this. Or we've had callers call in 2 or 3 times and be like, it was their own story that triggered a memory. And they were like, oh
yeah,
yeah, and then this happened.
yeah. It's true. So it's if nothing, it's a conversation that's flowing, and that's evident by volume 26 and counting. So let that be a call out for any listeners out there who have a story to share. We're going to be doing a whole bunch more episodes in the Encounters with Creep series. Generally, we're doing one a month. I plan to live for another 30 or 40 years, so that's a lot more episodes. So send in your voicemails by going to nighttimepodcast.com/contact. The voice recorder is easy to use, and don't worry if you make a mistake, because I'll clean it up before I play it for Madelayne.
I'm just picturing you as like 70 years old.
With you?
I'll only be like 60.
Okay. Well, that's a thing about podcasting. You don't really age out of it. A lot of radio show hosts are like older guys than me. I'll be doing this a long time.
I love it.
Not going anywhere.
A geriatric Jordan.
Yeah. I'm getting there quick. Yeah, I'll tell you. I did an episode recently where my guest, the author Sharon Butala, She's like, she was like 84 or something. And
I listened to that one.
She was so keen. She was sharp as a whip. She could talk circles around me. And I just, I heard her and I was like, maybe I can do this for 40 years.
I had a patient at work come through the other day who was 104.
Wow.
104.
Did they say anything?
I can't even imagine. I don't know. I didn't talk to him. I have no patient contact. It's great. But I saw the age. I was like, whoa, good for her.
All right. Well, let's put a bow on this. We've been through a lot tonight. Do you have a memorable story of the night? Which one are you going to take with you when you leave here?
The creepy Halifax Miles Payne guy, just because it's been going on for so long.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, the portion of the article I read was only a little piece of it. Like, there's so much to this guy's story. I'm surprised I had never heard of him, but yeah, people like that, they need to be. There needs to be a shorter leash when they get out of prison. I feel.
Just recently in Regina here, some guy was released and he's like a predator, high risk to reoffend. And then a month later, there's a warrant out for his arrest.
Who could have saw that coming?
Oh, good grief. What about you?
Since you said the Halifax creep, I am going to go with something different. I'm going to say Jill from New Jersey, who testified on behalf of her eventual creep.
Oh, what a way to meet someone.
Wow. What a way to encounter a creep.
I just can't believe, episode 26 and we're still getting new material.
I want to thank you for joining us for this episode of Nighttime. I have a huge and sincere thanks to everyone who took the time to share with us their creep encounters. These stories serve as a great reminder to keep our eyes open and our wits about us. And to any other listeners out there who have a story to share, I'm going to be doing a whole bunch more episodes in this series. We'd love to hear your story. You can share it by going to nighttimepodcast.com/contact. The voice recorder found there is easy to use, and don't worry about any mistakes, as I'll edit everything before it goes on air and make sure we're all sounding our best. We're excited to hear from you. Now, with that said, I'm going to start wrapping up the episode, but before we part, I'm going to give thanks. First, a big thanks to Madelayne for sharing another evening with me and with you, the listeners of Nighttime. A thanks to Monty Datta, who contributes the music, and Linz from the Dystopian Simulation podcast, who provides our intro and outro voiceovers. And then lastly, but most importantly, a massive thank you goes out to each and every one of you listening to Nighttime, as without your interest and your support, this show would be as pointless as it would be impossible. Now, on the topic of support, let me thank the newest subscribers to the premium feed. Beth, Erica, and Lisa, we appreciate you. And for anyone else who'd like to support the show, you can do it in a variety of ways. First of all, a premium feed subscription costs just a couple bucks a month, and that money will fund the creation of new episodes. But the premium feed will also give you those episodes 2 days early, give them to you ad-free, and give you access to a back catalog of episodes. If that sounds like something you're interested in, you can go premium at nighttimepodcast.com/subscribe. And even if you don't want to go premium, you can still support the show by sharing this episode on social media and letting all your like-minded friends know why they should listen. Your support is very much appreciated. Now, until next time, take care of each other, hug your loved ones tight, and let me know if you see anything weird.
The Nighttime Podcast is written, hosted, and produced by Jordan Bonaparte.